Day 2 of the jury deliberations begin at 8:30 Central Time, 2.5 hours away. Day 1 comes and goes, and as far as I'm concerned, that's a good thing for Donald Trump. If the jury had come back yesterday with a verdict, he would have been toast. They would have convicted him had they come back yesterday with something. Time is Donald Trump's best friend here. Time means that the jury is struggling to work through some things. That's what it would lead me to believe. Not that, it's not possible he gets convicted. It very much is. You hear from some of the top legal minds on this, guys like Andy McCarthy, Fox News and National Review, and he still thinks that Donald Trump is going to be convicted. He wrote a great piece about that last night in the National Review. But with each passing hour, just as an outsider looking in, somebody obviously who has not been in that courtroom, it would lead me to believe that it is a good thing for Donald Trump that this thing was not done yesterday. Now, that being said, Will Scharf is a Donald Trump attorney. He's also running for attorney general here in Missouri. He's going to be here in a half hour to tell us what he thinks, day 2 means, what the outcomes are, what is likely to happen at this point in time. So he's going to be here in a half hour. Do not miss that right here on KCMO Talk Radio. It will be his first appearance on the show. I met him up in Clay County for their Lincoln Days a few weeks back. And, he's been in and out of the state. He is running for attorney general here, but he's obviously also an attorney for Donald Trump. So he's going back and forth a lot. Nice guy. Have not had him on the show yet, and this feels like the right time to get him on the show. And he is going to be live from New York City at 6:35 this morning. So when you look at this case and you look at Donald Trump and what he's facing right now, there's a lot of things that confuse a lot of us, myself included. Unless you are in the nitty-gritty of what is going on with this case, you've sat there from afar and you probably have thought two things. 1, I don't get it. 2, I don't care to get it because the whole thing looks political. And it is political. That's what is the most important part of this entire trial for Donald Trump, New York versus Trump. It's entirely political. It is about the election. But since now this is the top story in America and, frankly, the top story in the world right now, going a little more in depth makes a little bit more sense. So as we sit here right now, here's what's going on when it comes to this case against Donald Trump and how this got to this point in time. Donald Trump, of course, as we know, paid off Stormy Daniels to basically keep her mouth shut. An NDA, non-disclosure agreement, right? Happens all the time in the country, in the world. It's happened in politics. It's nothing new. This is just kind of how this goes. Trump pays her off through Michael Cohen, his fixer. And the question is, did Donald Trump willfully violate the federal campaign finance laws? That's what this comes down to. Now, of course, you might be sitting there and asking yourself, well, why is this being handled at the local level? Why is this being... Well, that's one of the great questions that people continue to ask. Why is this about federal campaign finance laws and it's being done by Alvin Bragg, the DA from Manhattan, New York? It's one of the many ridiculous holes in this case that the average person is sitting there and saying, I don't get why this is going on this way, but it seems completely out of line. It seems completely ridiculous, and it seems completely political, and that's because it is. So what they're basically trying to prove is that Donald Trump, in paying off Stormy Daniels, was knowingly breaking the Federal Election Campaign Act. Here's the problem. There's no evidence to suggest that's the case. There's certainly nothing beyond a reasonable doubt that Donald Trump was even aware of a legal duty to comply with the Federal Election Campaign Act. And he somehow misreported this thing. Those are where the allegations stand on this case right now for Donald Trump. So Donald Trump last night found himself on Mark Levin's show right here on KCMO Talk Radio. It was about 6 o'clock last night. Donald Trump appeared on Mark Levin right here on 95.7 FM KCMO Talk Radio. And remember, he can't say a lot about the case. He's under this gag order. But here was what he said right out of the gates to Mark Levin last night.
Disaster. The judge is a disaster. You talk about somebody who's conflicted. There's never been a judge so conflicted. And it's just ruling after ruling for the other side. They have no case, but sometimes you're better off with a bad case and a great judge, and that's exactly what they have. It's a disaster for America. It's an embarrassment for America. And I think we're doing very well, but they have nothing. They don't even have a crime. They're trying to figure out what the crime is now. And I guess you probably heard they said they want to hear the instructions again. When you read them again, they take about an hour to read, and they've been made so complicated. That's, I guess, the hope. Maybe make it complicated so nobody understands what they're doing. But I'll tell you what, it is so unfair to this country, and nobody speaks about it more brilliantly than you. You are some great piece of work. I will tell you that, Mark.
You are some great piece of work. I'll tell you that, says Donald Trump to Mark Levin. So what Alvin Bragg, the Manhattan DA, is doing is he's conflating two very different things. He's conflating the knowing and basically the burying of politically damaging information through non-disclosure agreements, which is what Donald Trump did, which is entirely legal. Now, feel how you want about Donald Trump, right? That's a totally separate conversation, who Donald Trump the man is versus whether or not him going through an NDA is legal or illegal. It is very much legal. But the prosecution is conflating that with Donald Trump knowingly breaking federal election campaign laws, which would be illegal if the prosecutors could prove it, but of which there's no evidence against Donald Trump to suggest that he did knowingly break that law. Right? I mean, heck, he's talked about it back in the day when he was on Twitter. He talked about this stuff. So if you have tweets, it's the one time in Donald Trump's life his Twitter might actually help him. Like the one time in his life where the Twitter might help him because he's talked about this stuff going years back on Twitter. Twitter has mostly been, and social media has mostly been, in large part, I would say, a negative for Donald Trump, at least until he got into the White House. Since he got into the White House in 2017, it has not treated him well. He needed it to get there, but of course, once he got there, he overused it and misused it. But this is the one time it actually may help him, because he noted some of this stuff on Twitter, paying Michael Cohen, reimbursing Michael Cohen, things like that. If he knew he was breaking federal election campaign laws, you think he'd do that? And that's technically what the prosecution has to prove. But like so many other things, I've got to believe this jury is just beyond confused. And to Trump's point, the judge has made it very easy for them to come back with some kind of conviction. I mean, I got to imagine this judge is Mershon. This guy, he's one of these guys who is probably sitting around, with a little late night drink. I could see him with a little red wine, sipping it, watching Rachel Maddow, and, tickling himself or something like that. I could see that with this guy. He's, as Trump said, he's a piece of work. So now we sit here and we wait. And at 8:30 this morning, the jury deliberation will continue on day 2 of the Donald Trump trial. 913-408-7957. Day 2, is this a good thing that we are leading into day 2? I think it is. The longer it goes, the better it is for Trump. Will Scharf is one of Trump's attorneys. He is running for Missouri Attorney General. He is going to be here in less than 20 minutes on 95.7 FM KCMO Talk Radio and streaming on the KCMO Talk Radio app. I love when you guys are willing to do some of the work for me. This just came down on the text line. Hey, Pete, would you play the MSNBC clip? Andrew Weissman saying he has a man crush on Judge Mershon on MSNBC. I had not seen this, but we were able to dig it out of the archives here in the last couple of minutes. So this is from yesterday. Attorney Andrew Weissman admitting he has a man crush on the judge in the Donald Trump case in New York City. And this judge he has bent over backwards to try to get a conviction here. Let's roll the tape.
As you've noted, with respect to Judge Marchand, I mean, I am like now, I have like a man crush on him. He is such a great judge that it's hard to see that the jurors wouldn't have the same impression. I mean, you just keep on thinking, if you looked in a dictionary for like judicial temperament, that's what you get.
Oh my gosh, puke in my mouth. And then some. I mean, that's going on MSNBC last night. I couldn't do it. I didn't watch anything last night. I mean, I know what I need to know. I've got my opinions. I read everything I could, of course, after day one of the jury deliberating yesterday in this Donald Trump case. But I was not turning on any cable news. I just wasn't going to do it to myself. And I'm glad I didn't, because I would have had to have my friends at Zero Res Carpet Cleaning come out to clean the carpets, because I would have yacked all over the floor had I seen that live. And it would have woken up every kid in the house. I would have been, just throwing things against the wall, puking, everything. It would have been nasty. So I'm glad I missed it last night. But now this morning I'm here. I'm in a better mood. Everything is good. And wow, that's a clip right there. That is. Holy smokes. Now here's another interesting part of this that is not getting a ton of attention, and Andy McCarthy wrote about this in the National Review. Now, he believes that Trump is going to get convicted, and he believes that one of the reasons Trump is going to get convicted is because, as he puts it, Team Trump has presented one of the most ill-conceived, self-destructive defenses I have ever seen in decades. He said the reason for this is clear. Trump insisted that his lawyers subordinate his defense at trial to the political narrative he wants to spin in the 2024 campaign. In this instance, the legal and political strategies cannot be synced. Hence, he writes, Trump is helping Alvin Bragg get his coveted convictions. So he basically says that because he insists that Stormy Daniels is lying about their alleged fling, that he would never have done this, he would never have had this fling with Stormy Daniels. But the problem here, as he goes on the right, is that no one with even passing familiarity with Donald Trump's nature would believe for a second, one, that he would agree to pay $130,000 to Stormy Daniels if she was claiming to have had affairs with him, or that, two, Michael Cohen would have paid Stormy and Trump's pal David Pecker would have paid Karen McDougal unless Donald Trump had green-lighted the payments and assured them of repayment. He writes, since Trump knows that, if he acknowledges being complicit in the payment arrangements, voters will conclude his denials of the affairs are lies, and Trump has decided that he must distance himself from the NDA payments. He goes on to say, politically speaking, this is dumb because voters long ago made up their minds about Donald Trump's extramarital affairs, and if he admitted them at this point, he'd merely be admitting what is notorious and not credibly deniable. Legally speaking, Trump's gambit is disastrous. It makes no sense in a criminal courtroom for a defendant to deny his complicity in legal conduct when there is daunting evidence that he was complicit up to his neck. Basically, he's saying Trump wants to deny these affairs. He wants to deny that these things ever happened. And it could end up hurting him legally in this case. Whereas if he just admitted, I had an affair, I paid these two women, and there's nothing illegal about it, he would be better off in this case. But because he does not want to admit that to the world, he's got himself between this weird rock and a hard place. Because the prosecutors are framing the case of the jury as a criminal conspiracy to bury damaging information, when none of this is illegal. NDAs are entirely legal. Everybody knows that. But rather than just go with that, Trump has kind of acted guilty in this whole thing in trying to, suppress some of the information. Rather than just come out and say, it happened, I was trying to keep him quiet, NDAs are legal, and that's that. But because he's looked at this from more of a political angle than a legal angle, that's what Andy McCarthy is saying here, that's what puts Donald Trump in a very difficult position. And that's what makes this more difficult for his attorneys working this case. And according to Andy McCarthy, for Bragg, he writes, this is a gift from prosecutorial heaven. So, it's one of these things that the deeper you go, and Will Scharf is going to do this for us in a few minutes here on KCMO. He's one of Donald Trump's attorneys. He is going to be on this show. The deeper you go, admittedly, the more complex and convoluted it gets. But at the 35,000-foot level, here's what we do know, and here's what we all understand, I think. Even if you hate Donald Trump, even if you would never vote for him, you didn't vote for him in 16, you didn't vote for him in 20, you would never vote for him in 24. This is politically motivated. That is indisputable. And when MSNBC guests are going on there talking about their man crush on the judge, that's how you know, in part, the fix may very well be in. Oh, I've got such a man crush on oh, boy, this guy, Martian. Woo! Oh, gosh, I got to loosen my tie a little bit here. It's getting a little hot under the collar, says the MSNBC anchor. Unbelievable. Another place closing up shop on the plaza. Can't imagine it's a place a lot of people are going based on some of the issues the company's had, but it's just another sign and another storefront that is going to be empty down there on the plaza. Kansas City Express closing another location. They closed their Zona Rosa location. This comes weeks after they filed for bankruptcy, one of about 100 nationwide. They're planning to shutter as part of its reorganization. Now they are closing the one that is located right on Nichols Road, and the final day is going to be July 28th. Until then, get some deals, 20 to 50% off. They're giving it all away at Kansas City Express. So, listen, the company's obviously having issues. So it's not just about the plaza in this case. But let's be honest. People are not clamoring at this point in time to go on down to the plaza. They're just not. And by that, I mean businesses. I was down there for lunch a couple of weeks ago with somebody, and I'll tell you what, I mean, this is just anecdotally ballparking it. I would say the storefront closures, just driving around for a few minutes, were 20, maybe 25%. I don't have the official number. I have not been able to get the official number. But remember, the plaza is supposed to be getting sold here pretty soon to this HP Village Partners, a Dallas company with ties to H.L. Hunt, the father, of course, of Lamar Hunt. But nothing's happened on that front. I'm going to ask Mayor Lucas about this morning. He's going to be on at 7:30 because they're supposedly still under contract to purchase the plaza. This was agreed to last year. When it was first reported, I want to say it was October of last year. But nothing's happened since then. I mean, we are almost a year after it was first announced that this company out of Dallas, HP Village Partners, was going to buy the plaza. And nothing's happened, and no one's talking about it. And it makes me wonder if that deal is going to fall through, if anything's going to come out of it. Because if not, I mean, that would be just disastrous for Kansas City and would be disastrous for the mayor. It would be a black eye for the city council. You can't unload your crown jewel. You have people backing out of buying one of your, if not your supposed crown jewel. How does that look? And we know the issues, what's been going on down there. We talked plenty about it the last few weeks. Summer's here. They're going to try to slow down the sideshows and everything else. But we had a guy calling on Tirade Tuesday a couple of days ago. Came in from Shawnee, went down to the plaza with 4 of the couples, got out at 8:30, and he's like, I didn't feel safe going back to my car. Said he had 100 motorcycles flying around. Cops were nowhere to be found. No one was doing anything. He didn't feel safe in the parking garage. He's like, I'm not going back. And I'm thinking to myself, how disastrous is that? Kansas City needs people from around the entire metro going down to the plaza to eat, to drink, to have a good time, to shop. And if that's not going to be happening, man, that thing is going to go downhill real fast. Meantime, where was the mayor of Kansas City yesterday? The mayor of Kansas City was in Philadelphia. Quinton Lucas was, and we will ask him about this as well. I'm not going to get into this big tit for tat on Biden versus Trump. I'm not. I mean, there's too many things I got to talk to him about. But I will ask him about being in Philadelphia yesterday, where he was at this Blacks for Biden launch event that was taking place. And Joe Biden, here's part of what he had to say there. Quinton Lucas was in the audience.
Black voters place enormous faith in me. I've tried to do my best to honor that trust, staying true to the values set that we share.
Well, I'm pretty sure black Americans, just like white Americans and Asian Americans and Latino Americans, like to afford things. And by that definition of what people like out of their president, Joe Biden has failed not just black Americans, but he's failed white Americans. He has failed Latino, and he has failed Asian Americans. He's failed every American. I know they try to break up everybody into these subsets of like white, black, Asian, Latino, men, women, they, them. They want to go down the list and break us all into these, cute little convenient groups. But that's not how it works. Americans at large, we have much more in common than we don't. I know that's not something that really many politicians want to tell you, but trust me, we're all much more similar than we aren't. And I would say no matter who you are, where you are, what your skin color is, what your gender is, this ain't working. And for him to get up there and say, yeah, black voters place their trust in me. And what have you done for them? What have you done for any of us? I mean, yes, there's people you bailed out their student loans. I guess you've done something for them. But by the way, that is not overwhelmingly black people. That's not. That's overwhelmingly woke white people is what that is. Far more so than minority communities who are less likely to be going to college anyway. So what are you doing for them? What are you doing for any of them? But Quinton Lucas being there in Philadelphia yesterday suggests to me that he is very much interested in working for this administration if he can get reelected. If Joe can get reelected, Quinton's going to be banging on the front door. And that's just clear as day. There's no other reason for this guy who was in Detroit last week on behalf of the administration. Now he's in Philadelphia as they launch Blacks for Biden, and he's posting photos of him shaking Joe Biden's hand yesterday. And by the way, Joe looks like he has no idea who Quinton is. I mean, I'm just looking at this photo on the mayor's X page. I mean, it's no knock on Quinton. I just don't think Joe knows who he's talking to half the time unless it's Jill. And even Jill, he's just like, where's the closest bodega? That's all they're talking about. That's the extent of that conversation. So Joe's eyes, I mean, they all look glassed over, and it's not a good look for him. But listen, I think he's trying to chummy up with the right people and get himself maybe that HUD secretary position that Tony's Kansas City first floated out there. Quinton Lucas, your next HUD secretary, that's housing and urban development. The position is open. It's being held right now by somebody on a temporary basis. And the belief is that if Joe gets reelected, Quinton Lucas is on the short list to be the HUD secretary. And that's why the mayor of Kansas City finds himself in Detroit last week and finds himself in Philadelphia yesterday. So it's absolutely worth watching. And we will ask the mayor about his trip to the city of brotherly love, which is anything but that, coming up at 7:30 on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. The old adage, they tell you the first day you get into broadcasting, do not say anything near a microphone no matter what. Act like every microphone that you are near is on. Been told this for years. Now, admittedly, once in a while, you might say something in a room with a microphone that you would not say otherwise. We're all guilty of that. But this cost a broadcaster his job here in Kansas in a story that's gotten national attention. So announcer Toby Moore was working a high school soccer game between McPherson and Rose Hill. It was a third-place match between the two teams. It was being streamed online. Class 4A girls state high school soccer tournament taking place over the weekend. He has apologized for comments that were picked up on a hot mic. No pun intended. Here's what he ended up saying. He put down his microphone, but he was still being heard on the live stream broadcast. And he was quoted as saying, "Was that first half as ugly as I thought it was? My mind kind of flicked the kill me now switch at about 30 minutes in." Moore can be heard saying in this video that was recorded by a parent. Quote, "If they are going to keep kicking the damn ball out of bounds and missing passes all day, I may as well just go home." He said, "I just want to do a header off the top of the press box. Unfortunately, it's too low. It wouldn't kill me." I mean, he's having a day. It's like they aren't even trying to pass. They're just chucking the ball downfield. A little technique would be nice. What the hell are they teaching these kids in practice? It's unbelievable, he says. Moore was discussing the first half with an unnamed person. The conversation then turned to the female fans of the game. The other person later said to Moore, "A bonus, though, of calling high school soccer girls soccer for high school? The soccer moms." Toby Moore wholeheartedly agreed. He said, "The one that's facing us? See if she can tear it off," Moore said. He adds, "I can't see the legs, but I can feel the blank from here." And then he says, "This conversation never happened, by the way. We'd get in trouble." Moore did indeed, by the way, get in trouble. He is no longer allowed to work Kansas high school games as a broadcaster. His career is over.
They're going to be calling you and me, Pete.
No,
I have to step up for next year.
It's been about... I called high school games actually in southwest Kansas, northwest Oklahoma, and the Texas Panhandle from 2011 to 2013. I was based in Woodward. I did a lot of high school games. And trust me, you see a lot of bad sports when you're calling high school games. I saw them. I did football, basketball, boys and girls, did some baseball, did some softball. I mean, I saw a lot of bad high school sports.
First one to score wins.
Or, you're seeing, you're doing a high school baseball game, and it's like, oh, my goodness, you're here for 4 hours. It's 15-14. You got 7 pass balls, 15 errors on the whole thing.
You wish they had the pitch clock.
Yeah, sure. You ain't kidding. Trust me. Too many times. Trying to call high school baseball by yourself in the middle of July in Oklahoma. I mean, you want to talk about kill me now. Woo! That's it. That's it right there. Now, here's the thing. Is it inappropriate? Yes. But would I fire the guy for it? Would I say never again, or would I suspend him? I'd probably be like, dude, I'm more upset that you're dumb enough to say stuff around a microphone like that than with what you actually ended up saying. Okay? I mean, that's the part of it, too, that I'm thinking to myself out loud here. Would I put him on a suspension and say, dude, you got to take some time off? Let's reevaluate in the fall for football if you want to call some football games. I would probably handle it that way. Is it a sign that, sports radio or sports media has gone totally woke with these comments? I don't see it that way. I know my friend Kevin Keatsman does, and he's going to join us just after 9 o'clock here on KCMO to talk about this and much more. I just see it like, if you're dumb enough to get caught making some of those comments, there have to be some kind of repercussion. Just like, I'm not saying the guy's career should be over for being like, whoa, look at the good-looking soccer mom over there. Like, that's not a career ender to me. But if it's like, hey, we got to take you off the games here for a couple of days, let this thing cool down, and then move on, I'm okay with that, John. That seems appropriate to me.
It seems more and more prevalent, but I guess it's access to the equipment. I don't know. Maybe in the old days you had a union guy running the mic and all that kind of stuff, and this never came out. But more and more, and you would think people would be even more aware of it.
Well, yeah, exactly.
But now it becomes easy to just take a few things out to do a high school game, and so more high school games are probably on. Not that it's a high school thing, just more broadcast of sports in general.
Yep.
Where people, then you need people. It's not like we're all trained up for all those positions. So
exactly.
Guys get on there and they wing it and stuff happens. But we've had the Major League Baseball stuff to where I would think even guys at the lower level, when you start, that should be lesson number one, right?
Mm-hmm. You know, I will say the one mistake I made, I was here in Kansas City in the old studios in Mission, trying out for this show. It was early 2018. And where I used to work, when I was working at CBS and Fox News doing shows there, if I ever hit the talkback button to talk to John and Mark, the mic would go off if I hit talkback.
Mm-hmm.
In our studios in the old building, talkback did not turn your mic off. So when I was doing some test shows, I was talking to the person who was producing the show at the time, but I didn't know everything I was saying was going over the air. Now, I didn't say anything bad or dumb. I barely knew the guy, but it was like 3 hours into the show when someone called in and they're like, "Why is this guy talking during the commercial break over the air?" And I'm like, someone could have told me that.
Right. Yeah.
You know, it would have been nice to know that 3 hours ago that I was talking over the air as I was hitting the talkback button here in the studio. So it's just one of those broadcaster 101 things. But do I think a guy should lose his ability to call games because he's like, "Whoa, this game sucks. Soccer moms look good"? No, that's not a career ender for me. But I understand people are sensitive these days, and that's how it goes. The caravan is rolling through the streets of Manhattan, New York as we speak, as Donald Trump's legal team is pulling into the courthouse. The jury is set to rehear instructions and key testimony starting in 25 minutes as they go into day 2 of deliberation in that New York versus Donald Trump case that, of course, is ongoing. And, a lot of people thought there was going to be a verdict yesterday. That's obviously not the case. And I'm not even sure we're going to see one today. The longer this thing goes on, the better it is for Donald Trump. That means the jury is not just taking direction from the hack judge Marchand in the case. They're actually looking at this thing a little deeper. They're trying to figure it out as much as anything else and come to an understanding as to how, and this is at least what I hope's going on in part, they're trying to come to an understanding on how a city prosecutor in Alvin Bragg, and there goes Trump into the courthouse right now. Looking good. He's got a blue tie on, I think, here as he gets set to walk into the courtroom. If he, or the courthouse, if he does go live, Mark and John, we'll carry this here on KCMO. Just got out of the SUV. But anyway, I think for a lot of people trying to figure out how the feds, the Biden DOJ, did not elect to take up this case. They said, "No, we're good. We don't want any part of it. We're not going to pursue any charges." Yet somehow you now have a New York City prosecutor who ran on this, by the way, actually getting to the point where a jury is considering a conviction in a case where Donald Trump, they allege, broke federal campaign finance laws, which is what they're claiming, despite the fact that we all know non-disclosure agreements, which is what, this was with Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal, are very much legal and are signed all the time and have been used in politics for better or for worse for a very long time, and there's nothing illegal about it. The biggest issue that Donald Trump is facing here is that he has elected to continue to deny any knowledge of the payments to Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal, despite the fact that it's pretty well known that he knew about it. But he has denied that. Why has he denied that? Because he doesn't want the embarrassment of basically admitting to these alleged affairs. And to me, that's a mistake. If Donald Trump just said, "Hey, yes, these affairs happened. Yes, I signed non-disclosure agreements. I agreed to these things with these women. I was, yes, trying to protect myself and my family during the 2016 election." That's game, set, match. And by the way, it wouldn't change a single vote. All that stuff for Donald Trump is baked into the cake. Everyone knows who he is. You can vote for the guy and obviously not think he's a perfect human being. You cannot vote for him and feel how you feel about him personally. But all the personal stuff for Donald Trump is baked into the cake. People know who he is. He was never a choir boy, never pretended to be one. It's not who anybody thought Donald Trump was. But he's continuing to want to kind of play up this whole thing of like, I knew nothing about it. These affairs never happened. And let's be honest, no one in their right mind actually believes that. And it's okay because there's nothing illegal about that. There is nothing illegal about that. But that's where he is in part making this case more difficult on himself in some respects. Because the jury is seeing the evidence that suggests he clearly knew about it, the payments were made, while he continues to deny any real knowledge on that, which is a mistake on the part of his defense team. But I understand they also have to look at this from a political standpoint, not just a legal standpoint. And if their client continues to say, listen, this is my stance, this is my approach, it's not changing, then they've got to work around that. And that's part of the issue as well. Now, Donald Trump was on with Mark Levin last night. And here is part of what he had to say about this case.
Who's ever seen anything like this? You know who's... I'm gagged, so I can't talk about it other than to say, look who's working this case in New York. Look at it. Look who's working it. And you've covered that very well, but maybe not everybody knows. But this all comes out of the White House and comes out of DOJ. Even the civil cases. You know, I had civil cases where I had horrible judges, horrible judges. Totally rigged stuff. I mean, nobody would believe. We're like a third world country. We have rigged courts, we have bad elections, and we have no borders. Other than that, we're doing lovely. You know, just incredible. This guy has no clue what he's doing.
That was Donald Trump at 6 o'clock last night right here on KCMO on the Mark Levin Show right after day one of the jury deliberating. They broke. They're back at it here coming up in 20 minutes on KCMO Talk Radio. President Trump is expected to come out here and make some comments shortly in New York City. When that happens, we will carry it here on KCMO Talk Radio because now, like, this is when it starts to get good. You know, I mean, every day, obviously, Trump has made comments. He's talked about this a little bit to the media. But now that the jury is doing its job, and now that we are here in day 2 of this deliberation, and it might take much longer than the media wants it to. I mean, we could be well into next week at this point before we get an answer from the jury. Who knows? I mean, I'm not going to pretend to know what's going to come out of this deal. Now, some people believe, understandably, that the fix is in and that the guilty verdict is going to come. Even people who understand and believe this thing to be a total sham, they think a guilty verdict is going to come, in part because of how Judge Merchan has handled this case. And you don't have to take my word for it. Can we play that, Mark, clip from MSNBC? Should be in the earlier block today at about 6:17. Pull that for me if you could, where you have an MSNBC political, or I should say attorney, but also a political creature. His name is Andrew Weissman. Take a listen to what he had to say last night on MSNBC when it came to the judge in this case.
With, as you've noted, with respect to Judge Merchan, I mean, I am like now, you know, I have like a man crush on him. He is such a great judge that it's hard to see that the jurors wouldn't have the same impression. I mean, you just keep on thinking, if you looked in a dictionary for like judicial temperament, that's what you get.
Oh my gosh. Get him flowers and chocolates while you're at it there, chump. Holy smokes. Oh, I got such a man crush on him. Hey. One man crush at a time there, buddy. It sounds to me like this wasn't Andrew Weissman's first man crush, as far as I could tell, the way he's talking about it. Holy cow. So now we sit here and we wait. And in the meantime, Donald Trump may be speaking here shortly. If that does happen in the next few minutes, we will carry it here on KCMO Talk Radio, 95.7 FM, and streaming on the KCMO Talk Radio app. This is not about how you feel about Donald Trump politically. You can despise Donald Trump, the politician, while also being of the belief and being able to admit that this is election interference. While Joe Biden's down pandering to blacks yesterday in Philadelphia, Donald Trump's stuck dealing with this in New York City. He cannot be on the campaign trail. Doesn't have time to go to places like Arizona, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Georgia. Can't do it right now. So by that, it's election interference. And on top of that, you know, you got a situation where a lot of people can admit that what this was ultimately all about is a legal non-disclosure agreement that a local DA is trying to spin into federal campaign finance violations. It is the stretch of all stretches, but it also is very much on brand for some of these folks in New York. 913-408-7957. As we approach day 2, it's starting in 15 minutes. On KCMO Talk Radio, as the former president gets set to speak here to the media, we will take it to you on KCMO. Okay, here he is, Donald Trump speaking right now. Jury set to resume deliberations in about 10 minutes.
Order that he put on me. So one subject he really doesn't want to talk about. There was no fraud. There was no conspiracy. It's that simple. Moreover, without a primary crime, there can be no secondary crime. It's a classic lawfare, weaponizing statutes, because the law has been, okay, ready? Because no law has been broken. That was Greg Jarrett. Ellie Honig, legal analyst for CNN. The crime here is not easy to explain or to understand. It's just not understandable. In other words, there is no crime. This is CNN. Catherine Christian from MSNBC, I call it MSDNC, legal analyst. It's difficult because it's a very nuanced argument. It's never been prosecuted before. This is an argument that has never been prosecuted before. And hopefully it'll never be prosecuted again. Andy McCarthy, this is anything but standard. It's the antithesis of standard, actually. The idea that they do not have to agree on what the other crime is. We spent 6 weeks wondering, what is the other crime? What is the other crime? And at the end, the thud we all get is this. There's 3 or 4 of them, and you could pick one from the other, and they don't have to agree on anything. And what he's saying is it's so corrupt. Nobody's ever heard of a thing like this. It's called pick 'em. It's like the lottery. Pick 'em. You pick 'em. And you don't have to be, even though in a criminal case you have to be unanimous, you don't have to be. Just give a couple of votes, because the judge, unfortunately, is corrupt. Judge Jeanine Pirro, no one has heard of this. It's like there's a menu column A, B, or C. You don't have to agree on it. This is a kangaroo court. This is unheard of. I've never seen anything like it. I've done this for 32 years. I'm not a federal prosecutor. I'm a state prosecutor, so I know what I'm talking about. I'm not a federal judge. I'm a county judge, just like Bersha. This is New York law. This is my wheelhouse. He is 100% wrong. He's wrong. That's what Jeanine Pirro, very woman, very smart woman. Jonathan Turley, this is becoming a 3-card Monte game on where is the crime? Smart guy, where is the crime? Mike Davis, the U.S. would sanction a country for doing this. I think that's good. I think that's good. Steve Hilton, it seems that every single day these proceedings go on, the judge and the prosecutor just go out of their way to prove Trump's point. And I guess they are proving my point when you think. That's why I write some of these things that are very sad. Mark Levin, this Stalinist-like case, it's a Stalinist-like case. It has prevented President Trump from running for office. It has prevented him from campaigning. He's unable to campaign because he's been in a courthouse for 5 weeks. And yet we just had a poll came out, NPR. Trump's 54, Biden's 42. And that's with independents. That's the best we've ever had. They said this is the single best poll that Trump has ever had with independents. Trump's largest lead among independent voters, NPR Marist College, 44-28. And Junior is way down, way down.
Junior.
But it's 44. Junior, who's extremely liberal, by the way, he's extremely radical left. I think you know that. But he seems to be hurting Biden probably a little bit. So that's it. It's a disgrace. The millions and millions of dollars that are spent daily on this case. Outside, it looks like it's Fort Knox, like they're guarding this. I've never seen so many police them. Now, with Columbia University, you can plant a tent right in front of the main door, no problem. NYU, just put your tent up. Don't worry about it. Over here. But I just want to say that this is a very sad day for America. The whole world is watching. And it's a very sad day for New York. I've gone through 2 of these trials already.
All right, that's good.
The same kind of a judge.
That's Donald Trump this morning, right now speaking in New York City as the jury resumes deliberations coming up in 5 minutes. I just found this poll. I didn't see this poll he was just referring to from NPR. National Panhandler Radio putting this out in the last 24 hours. Wow. A lot of bad stuff here for Joe Biden. In a head-to-head matchup, Biden and Trump are in a statistical tie, which, by the way, nationwide statistical tie is not good for Joe Biden because that includes New York, California, all those places. Of course, what's going to matter is the state by state. But here's the thing. When you actually break it down by subset, by age group, by independent, some of what Donald Trump was just referring to there, Joe Biden leads by 4 points with voters under 45 and leads by 6 points with Gen Z and millennials. That is a group that Joe Biden won by more than 20 points back in 2020. He won 18 to 29-year-olds by more than 20 points. Now he's up by 6 with Gen Z and millennials. Wow. By the way, when you add in independents RFK Jr. and Cornel West, as well as the Green Party candidate, Joe Biden trails Donald Trump by 4 points. Trump then leads by 6 with Gen Z and millennials and by 8 with those under the age of 45 in this scenario when you include the third-party candidates. That is just brutal. Some of these numbers for Joe Biden, 24% of 18 to 29-year-olds approve of the job he's doing. That's why he's trying to buy off their student loans. 62% of young voters have an unfavorable opinion of Joe Biden, while Trump has a net positive rating, 49 to 42 in that group. That is the highest favorability rating for Trump of any of the age groups. That is nuts. It's 18 to 29-year-olds. Now, I'm reading this in real time, so I'm going through this. I just, heard Trump talking about it, and I just found the poll. So I'm going through this right now in real time. I haven't had a chance to really digest it beyond what I'm reading here in front of you right now. Wow. Why young voters are so disillusioned with Biden, the economy. Prices are top of mind for voters overall. When people are in a sour mood, especially on the economy, they tend to blame the president. Of course, NPR puts in this caveat, even if it's one of the things that a president has the least control over. Oh, my, you bunch of hacks.
I'm getting pissed now.
You got to be kidding me. I mean, that's National Panhandler Radio. Hey, when you got to get funded by the government to exist, to function, to operate, that's the kind of stuff you're going to get in their editorialization of their own poll. Oh, boy. Like they're trying to soften their own poll for the president of the United States. Biden continues to do better than he did in 2020 with older voters and white voters with college degrees, men and women. That's telling as well. Old voters aren't really getting hit as much by this economy. They're not. Kids are out of the house. Food prices are pretty much fixed. It's younger people with families that are getting smoked right now. And that's what the polling is showing too. Boomers, not as much. GDP coming in at 1.3%. And just for a little bit of comparison here, that is the lowest GDP number since Q2 of 2022, when it was negative. But that's because 2021 was booming. So GDP hitting its lowest levels in 2 years. This just coming down here in the last hour. U.S. economy grew at a slower 1.3 annual pace in the first 3 months of the year. Revised figures show largely because of softer consumer spending. We're seeing this across the board. New York Times writing here, U.S. gross domestic product adjusted for inflation grew at 1.3% annual rate first 3 months of the year. The Commerce Department said on Thursday morning today that was down from 3.4% in the final quarter of 2023 and below the 1.6% growth rate reported last month. in the government's preliminary first quarter estimate. It's funny how that works. Another revision on a jobs number, on a GDP number that ends up getting reversed downward. Why does that keep happening, John?
Well, that must explain the job numbers going up. They need more people in the reassessment department.
That's what they need. Yeah. Commerce Department needs some help, apparently.
Yeah.
So the data released this morning reflects more complete data than the initial estimate, released just a month after the quarter ended. The government will release another revision next month. The preliminary data, exactly, fell short of forecasters' expectations, but economists at the time were largely unconcerned, arguing that the headline GDP figure was skewed by big shifts in the business inventories and international trades, components that often swing widely from one quarter to the next. Yeah, that's just not good. You have inflation that remains stubborn. Consumer prices rose 3.5% the first 3 months of the year. GDP gets revised down to 1.3%, lowest numbers in 2 years. What more do you need right now to look at the economy at large and say it's not just about Wall Street? Wall Street is not the thing. Yeah, okay, the 401k looks good if you log on to your Charles Schwab, Fidelity, Vanguard app. But unless you're in retirement or within a stone's throw from retirement, it's meaningless. All it means is you can't put more into your retirement right now because your cost of living has gone up. That's what it means. 913-408-7957. That is the studio line and our text line here on KCMO Talk Radio, 95.7 FM. On the text line, Pete, revised GDP numbers will just give Jerome Powell, the Fed chair, the excuse he needs to lower interest rates. Just in time, possibly, to help Joe Biden in November. And then we got a woo at the end of that one. No, I don't think so. I don't believe that at a 1.3 GDP, especially if inflation remains too hot, even if GDP is low, he cannot lower interest rates right now. He just can't do it. Let me see where the markets are at this morning. They opened up here in the last 20 minutes. Let's see. Wow. Dow's off 358 points, off 1%. S&P down 0.25%. Not much on the S&P. But I would say overall the markets are not liking that economic news that just dropped this morning. So let's go to the phone. Steven is in Kansas City. What's up, Steven? You're on KCMO Talk Radio. Good morning.
Yeah, Pete, good topic. This is, I think it's an election year. Anything can happen. They may go two times lower on rates. The Home Depot CEO was basically laying out the case that, it's time to sell after the election, or maybe even sooner, because the consumers tapped out. Target's cut prices. The credit cards are tapped out. Biden's been pumping all the money into this economy that he possibly can. I would be on a hair trigger to sell right now. The Obama leftovers from the Biden administration have created a huge hole for us to dig out of. And the ironic thing is that those young voters who are deserting Biden are not going to vote for him because of Gaza anyway, for those 10% swing that they need. So this is all totally pointless. It's just papering the economy for a chance for Biden to win. That's what this is all about. But if you're on your 401k, just keep an eye on the news, because this is a formula for just an incredible bubble bursting. That's my take on it.
And it's big. Thank you, Steve. It's getting fluffed up in large part too by AI heavy stocks. NVIDIA continues to just go to the moon, and NVIDIA has been a large reason for why the markets have just continued to go bonkers. Is the AI thing a bubble? I don't believe AI is a bubble. I think AI, artificial intelligence, is here to stay. I don't believe it's going anywhere, but it's certainly become almost too important when you look at the stock market at large. And that's what's happened with the Magnificent Seven, as they're called in general. Amazon, Meta, Google, Tesla, NVIDIA, Apple, all those stocks are driving the stock market to these record highs. And listen, I think any of us with a 401k or any investments will gladly take that. But it doesn't lessen the pain of groceries up 20% the last 3 years. It doesn't lessen the pain of the average new car topping $45,000. Already, you look at these car loans, you're financing cars out 72 months. Some cases, I think you can probably get an 84-month car loan. You're talking about mortgages now on vehicles. That's why the average car on the road now is over 12 years old, which is the oldest in history. 2 months older than the average car was 1 year ago. Who's going out and dropping 45? And that's an average new car. That's not like, hey, I'd like, Bluetooth and leather seats and the whole thing. That's just like, hey, you want an average new vehicle, $45,000. Who's doing that right now? And I wish it wasn't the case, because obviously we have great partners in this industry that, we want to make sure people are going out and buying from. Friends over at Volkswagen Lease Summit. I mean, I bought a car from them 2 years ago. I'm glad I did then. But listen, they still have some great deals because they have to right now. They've got to get these cars off the lots, and there's incredible competition for it. So just understand what they're dealing with, but it's happening across the entire economy at large. It's tough out there. The consumer is tapped out, to use Steve's phrase. He's right. And I don't see how that's changing anytime soon, especially since wages have not kept up on average the last 3 years. Your life is 20% more expensive across the board than it was. Most people have not seen 20% pay increases on average over the last 3 years. That's just not what the average consumer and worker has seen. So now you sit back and you say to yourself, okay, what next? Well, I think you're going to see more goosing up of the economy. You're going to see more people getting their student loans bailed out as the president tries to stop the hemorrhaging of young voters. But by the way, that's not going to help inflation, because if somebody gets their student loan paid off, right? If suddenly you're paying a few $100 a month in student loans, and let's say you're one of the lucky ones that Joe Biden bails out. If that money goes right back into the economy, that will keep inflation high. That's the thing. Government spending only makes the problem worse. Even as they claim they're helping you, they're not.